Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. Give me one moment. I'm about to start the show over on Instagram as well tonight. Oh, that's way too loud. There. So welcome to the show, folks. I may have just actually closed Instagram. Let me just double check. I think I may have messed up on that one. I haven't done this before. I was just checking. No, it looks like I'm live. I'm just double checking. Okay, cool. So welcome. This is the weekly spinner rack. If you haven't been here before, that's okay. Welcome. We are going to talk about some of the newest comics that came out this week. There were some really, really good ones that came out. And we're going to talk about some of the wild comic book news of the week, including stuff that couldn't be any more of a hot topic. If it was any more of a hot topic, it would have Manic Panic hair dye and be stocked full of anime-based Funko Pops. We have some hot topics. But before any of that, I'm going to use my special branding. Let's get the show started. Hello, everybody, and look, Rick, surprise, you're live.
Gary, hello! Happy Hanukkah, Super Kwanzaa, holidays!
Holidays. Mr. Christmas is with us. Look at this guy. Thank you for taking a couple minutes out of your. I am aware of how busy you are, Rick, and I'm always grateful to have a few minutes to chat with you. It's always fun.
Chris.
Yeah, we've got
this an opportunity.
Yeah. Oh, no worries. I have you because I sincerely enjoy your books, man. I really do. The Holy Roller and the Sacrificers are two of the newer ones that are coming out right now. I've got questions about some of your books and about like Giant Generator, but I also thought of something today. So I was looking, and you've got a book coming out through Giant Generator that you're doing with Brian Posehn. Very funny gentleman, very talented. He's written some comics. Am I remembering right? I sincerely don't know if I'm having an old man moment or if I'm remembering correctly. Do you have a Christmas-related story with Brian Posehn aside from the comic that you guys wrote?
The Last Christmas is Jerry Duggan and Brian had never done a comic book back in 2005, but they were around the conventions all the time. And so we had been friends for many years, and they were talking about The Last Christmas. And I had just finished doing a book with Bruce Campbell, where I had worked with Hilary Barda on finishes and had a team together. And I said, well, it'll translate pretty well into this. And
Nice.
So I had made a home at Image at that point. And so we took it and brought it over to Image Comics, where I drew it. And that was a lot of fun.
I miss getting to see your art. I for some reason and maybe I'm conflating things. I feel like I remember Posehn used to have a stand-up bit about blasting the song Last Christmas at your house. Am I?
Well,
is that wrong?
Yeah, but I'm not telling that joke. That joke
because it's his joke. I got it. Okay.
It's his joke, and it's.
But I'm not misremembering it then.
No, there's a story. There's a joke.
He did that to you. Okay. So I just associate you with Christmas ever since hearing that story.
Well, look, and I dressed up in my Santa clothes. I have my it's my normal hoodie. I have a menagerie. You actually went for the full sweater. You're a committed man. I
should be committed.
I just changed colors of the same things, which is a lot for me.
Very nice. It was a pleasant surprise to briefly bump into you at New York Comic Con, because you have been pretty careful ever since the pandemic started, and working from home, staying with the family and isolating and stuff, not doing as many conventions. How did New York treat you? How do you enjoy it or not enjoy it?
It was amazing in that there is beyond all the cynicism and the online vitriol and all of the sort of passions in the industry, it's a place that I've spent the majority of my life. I've been working in comics since, the mid 90s now. So, and I hadn't done shows after having done a lot of shows forever. I hadn't done any shows in years. I think the last show I had done was New York in 2018 when we were promoting the Deadly Class TV show. And so then, of course, monumental nightmares, one after the other, bestowed to all of us because we've been bad. And one after another, I was in shutdown mode. I lost my father. Everything else blew up. The world it was every day I woke up and I go, well, here we go. What's this going to be? Oh, white nationalists are storming the Capitol. Hey, climate change fires are turning the skies red. This is great. It was pretty apocalyptic. And so, I hadn't done any shows in a long time, but I loved it. I had a great time. Everybody was, it's really easy because of the hyper negativity of the comic book industry online or community. I don't even know what that's become. I sort of Instagram where it's like, it's just art and people like posting photos of food and skateboards and dogs. And I like Instagram for that. I can block things a lot easier and not have to deal with every single person expressing every single minutia of every single thought they have on every single thing.
It all has the same volume.
Kind of, yeah. I mean, but the industry, when you look at it through the lens of the internet, it can seem like this, hyper negative place. And then you go to a show and you're like, oh, no. Most people who are still into this and doing it in comics and reading them, I was like, oh, everybody's really just passionate and happy and loves doing it. And they're all so nice and all these great conversations. And you have to remember from 2017 and 18, I was full-time show running. And so, I did maybe 2 shows those years at all. So really it had been 2017, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, and 23. And this year I did Barcelona, I did San Diego, and I did New York just to kind of get back in the fold.
That's awesome.
And it was great. And so I'd ended all these books. I had been working on Seven to Eternity and Low and Deadly Class and Black Science and Death or Glory. And I mean, just on and on and on. And excuse me. So I'd wrapped all these books, but I hadn't actually had a human conversation or a moment of, it's necessary because in comics especially, or it's just as a writer, you're creating, you make things. And then what I express, how I always say in comic books, it's basically like taking a pamphlet, folding it into a paper airplane and throwing it into a hurricane of other pamphlets. And then it disappears 30 days later and you go, I worked really hard on that. And some brilliant artist bled on it for months. I hope.
I get that. Yeah. I remember in college, I was doing things like stand up and improv and you get like this immediate response.
Yeah.
And I've always loved like drawing and writing too, and comics is my favorite storytelling medium, but there is that huge delay where you're like, how is this going to land?
And a lot of the time you don't get any response. I mean, like I still like to do letters, columns. And
I love that. Yeah.
And then I took a couple of years off between finishing Righteous Thirst and the Scumbag and getting my new, line of books together. But anyway, so it was.
I've got questions about that. Yeah.
Yeah, let's talk about it.
Let me acknowledge this because somebody sent a super chat. That's generous. John has a question that I was sort of going to ask, but differently. He says, like, a question for the gentleman guest. Gentlemen, debatable. How on earth are you so good at writing quality superhero tales? Like, seriously, let's have the real data.
I don't write them as if they're superheroes.
That's fair.
I always wrote all my superhero stuff as if I was writing another genre. And, my influences, obviously I grew up reading, I'm a kid of the 80s. So there was, a metric ton of Chris Claremont X-Men, as well as, Howard Chaykin, American Flag, and Frank Miller. I mean, Walt Simonson. I'm nothing unique. I'm a creature in terms of comic books baked in, punk rock, skateboards in that era of comic books, and in the movies of the 80s. And so but I don't approach. Though there was definitely a good bit of Claremont in my X-Force and some of my Marvel work. I always just endeavored to more draw from outside influences in order to make it seem unique and fresh, so that it wasn't a snake eating itself, masturbatory and self-referential, where it's like, do you remember issue 8944? This is that character in the background, and they're back, which is what we've seen kind of the cinematic lean into, and it destroys. It's like, it's a cool part of comics. There's the Easter eggs.
A little goes a long way there.
And say again?
A little goes a long way there.
A little goes a long way.
I'll push back and just say that, like, Rick, one thing I always like about your stories is there's a good structure where I feel like, and maybe you're fooling me, but I think that you've planned it out, that you always have a character arc you're going to take the main character or the characters on. Because, I mean, even if we look at the superhero stuff, like John Dorsey just asked, like Uncanny X-Force, I feel gave me the first time I actually cared about Deadpool, for instance. It was an interesting character. That was the first time I cared about him. All of the characters on that X-Force team literally end your arc in a different place, a different mindset. They went through something. And I see that, of course, in your creator-owned work. So I was just paying you a compliment there. There's obviously not much to do.
But no, I mean, you're right. And I think that, I wrote X-Force. I was very fortunate in that X-Force was not a priority of the company. It was not generating anything that had to be, the X-Men were owned by Fox before Disney bought Fox. And so I was in a corner with things that they were like, it didn't really, it wasn't a committee of people involved. So I got to do X-Force a lot like I did Fear Agent, or a lot like I've done a lot of books since. And kind of just, I wrote giant stories, and I got to kind of bring in artists and create something that was, I think X-Force is very close to being a creator-owned book in that regard. And then, as it became a huge success and you climb that ladder, the relationship changes a little bit. And so it was almost like this, the success maybe prevented me from continuing doing things the way I do them on my own.
Well, I love getting to read, your creator-owned books, from, Seven to Eternity to Fear Agent to Low, et cetera. And right now, something I'm curious about is, like, okay, so you're putting out some of the books that I was talking about, like Holy Roller and The Sacrificers. They're being published through Image. So what was the impetus on your end for starting Giant Generator? What was the thought process behind sort of needing that imprint to exist, as compared to just doing your own thing?
Well, it is my own thing, and the imprint has been on all the books for about a decade now. So it really is just to curate a line, and it's also my production company. So that's when I'm working on 3 TV shows right now based on some of the books again. And so Giant Generator was both things, but I think that more than anything, it's like, the way that your favorite record label or indie label, if you're into SST or Sub Pop or whatever it was in the late 80s or mid 80s, like you kind of understood what you would get from that. And so it's a curated line dedicated to, the company owns nothing. So there's a lot of people out there, not to throw any rocks, specifically companies that have upstarted, and they're talking about creator owned, and they're not creator owned. Giant Generator owns nothing. The company owns zero. And so is the artist and I sharing ownership. And that's creator-owned comic books. And ultimately it's that, and it's the best artists in the world. I'm very particular.
Seriously. Yeah, no, I love your taste in artists. Love your taste in artists. I am curious, like there was news, like, right around like New York Comic Con and stuff, that several artists were exclusive. Like, what would that mean?
It means that we're guaranteeing them a page rate. It means that we're guaranteeing them creative freedom. It means that we're actually doing what I consider to be, I sleep well at night, because I've had plenty of opportunities in terms of the business end of this to do something a little bit different in regards to making money. I could have made a lot more money. I've had a lot of people tell me that this is foolhardy. I'm not attached in any way, shape, or form. I'm publishing some books by other writers now, J.G. Jones being the first. I'm going to help him take this amazing book dust to dust to market and help develop it and pitch it. I don't have to. If he doesn't like the way we're working together or doesn't like my help as a producer in film and television, he can tell me to eat shit and walk away. I've had the way I do things bite me in the ass. If you get people who don't understand how the business works and they act a fool, as it were. But that's sort of like, I had an argument years ago, and it was about like, should Steve Ditko be able to kill Spider-Man because of his sort of, Ayn Randian objectivism?
Yeah.
And as the guy who created him, yeah, I think so. Now, he sold it all to a corporation way back when, and he didn't have any rights, but the artist and the writer should have the same amount of rights and be arm wrestling on these things at all times. And so I've structured a company to enable that to happen and to keep them involved in co-ownership of what they create, while also promising them top page rates and working myself to death to ensure that they have the best scripts that I can give when I'm writing them. And if not, that I'm helping curate and make sure that the people who are doing books with Giant Generator get the support and love they need to really feel like well loved and supported.
That's nice. That's nice. Earlier, you're talking about sort of the vitriol and the scary, crazy world that we live in. I mean, there's a lot of that in here. Fortunately, you've got like a little, just enough like that it's like some satire that it makes it not quite like the most bitter pill to swallow. I mean, this was a really fun 42 pages. I mean, it's about like, small town, middle America falling on, I mean, I'll say hard times, but like, America's got some serious problems. Yeah. This addresses it, but still gives us sort of like an action adventure story with, some sort of an underdog, underachiever hero. Could you tell us though? I mean, everybody's curious, Rick, like how in the world are Andy Samberg and Fall Out Boy's Joe Troman involved? Like that just, it doesn't make sense on paper that all of a sudden these, like, a rock star and a comedian are writing a comic with you.
Joe is also a writer, and so Joe is working on we did a short together in an Anthrax anthology, and during the pandemic or before the pandemic, Joe was working on a thing at Nickelodeon and Netflix, a couple other things, and he needs office space, and so the Giant Generator office space had a couple extra offices, and so Joe rented one. And so one day Joe's playing guitar and sitting in my office and I'm typing away, and he starts talking about this idea, and he had the bare bones sort of, notion of what this would be. He's like, anti-Semitism, even growing up in the 80s, in the 90s, was so real that I would go bowling to get rid of my anxiety and just like to hear things get hit, because it was like he was dealing with what he described as, really vitriolic anti-Semitism. And we started talking about a vigilante who did that, and then, baked into this whole thing. And then it just kind of died away. We talked about it a bunch. And at one point in time, a buddy of mine, John Silk, was also renting a space in the office. And he's a producer. We're working on Tokyo Ghost with Cary Fukunaga. And so he was in office working on that, which is still ongoing and has a lot of cool things happening. But so John heard the Holy Roller idea at lunch with Joe and I. And he goes, "Oh my God, would love that is Andy." And they had gone to school together, or he knew him from Berkeley. And I was a Bay Area kid for forever. So did a Zoom with Andy and Joe and just talked about the idea. And suddenly I realized it had been 3 hours and we were pitching and breaking story and laughing. And this is right at the end of the pandemic. So I'm still doing these, it's like this crazy. There's something about the screen conversations that feel anyway, but I had done enough of them, and it was post-pandemic that I was building the new line, and I've got like 8 books that'll be rolling out over the course of the next 3-4 years. And I was like, I don't really have time for another one, but this was just like, I really desperately, first of all, Andy is a delightful person. Yeah. He's really funny. He's lovely. He's very, very generous with, he gives a laugh up. And when you make Andy laugh, you're like, okay, I like that. It's like working with Bryan. If you can make Bryan laugh, you can, it feels like, oh, I did something neat. And so anyway, we just fell in love with it. We kept doing Zooms and breaking it until we had an outline for 8, 9, 10 issues. And then I brought in the team that had just finished up the Scumbag of Roland Boschi and Moreno Denisio, who are two of the very, very, very best artists in just, in the world. And Roland, when you see when we finally get into the crazy sort of vigilante action stuff. Anyway, so the book fell together and we put it out, and now you're holding it.
Yeah. I'm excited to see where it goes. You know why? I can't really predict exactly where it's going to go. It's different enough that I don't really, and I need that at this point. I've been reading comics for a while, so I look for stuff that can surprise me. Similarly, fantasy, I think, has been like growing over the last 10, 15, 20 years, but it's still not a genre that you see like in comics as much as even maybe crime. I don't know. I'd have to look at the numbers. I'm just speculating wildly off like my own thoughts, but
no, it's definitely not. It's not fantasy. It's not a grand slam out of the parks genre. There are exceptions to it, but it's usually when the genre is kind of mixed up with something else.
And this is a gorgeous looking book. Of course, you've got Max Fiumara and Dave McCaig. One thing I'm curious about this in the Sacrificers, I don't want to like spoil everything. I'm just going to tell people there's a little bit of a premise where this is a world that has like gods and all sorts of creatures throughout a mystical land. And the people, the hardworking, like farmers and so on, the working class people have to give up, sacrifice. I guess it's their firstborn, right? That's just expected. It's just a kid. Okay. So they get taken away, and that's the beginning. And I'm not going to go too much further than that, I don't think. But I am curious about one thing. One of the main kids that we see kidnapped early is Pigeon. And I just want to know, is that very intentional that it was a pigeon as compared to any other sort of animal? Because, of course, a homing pigeon can always find its way home.
I would love to pretend that was part of what was baked into it, but the character was called Pigeon, and that was what his parents called him in the book. And originally in the script, in the first version, he was a human. He was just this ratty kid. And then as we developed the world, it's a fantasy, and so I would tell Max, like, all right, there's this god, that god, and all these great things, which of course could be really awful if it weren't in the hands of two geniuses. When you've got, Max and Dave together, it's high art. There's no better looking book in the industry. And those guys, like, we've been working on this for years.
Okay.
In order to give it, I mean, I don't think anybody can appreciate what goes into it. And, I get at the con, I get a lot of like, your books are so much better than every Marvel and DC book. And I was like, well, no further. I mean, they are, objectively, but I think that a lot of that comes in terms of the art because of the way we build these things, where the artists have breaks between arcs and they're allowed to have time. At this point, some of the, Yannick Paquette and Daniel Acuna and there's just a huge stable. And I haven't even announced 3 or 4 of the books of people, and J.G. Jones and all these high-end artists have been working for years, just taking their time and building the books. The book that Ben Gall and I are about to announce or release in February, Napalm Lullaby, we've been working on that since 2017.
Okay. Wow.
The first batch of pages came in 2017, and then we've been picking away at it. And he's just made this spectacularly strange, beautiful world. And so when you give the artist that time, and what Max has done with it has been, nothing short of spectacular, because he had the time to do that.
That's great to hear.
But so it was Pigeon. Pigeon was a human until one day Max turned into design, where he said, "Well, his name is Pigeon. What if because there were some bird people anyway." So Max turned in this actual pigeon design, and I was like, "Oh my God, that's so amazing."
I mean, look, folks, like, this is just a glimpse, but look at that action. I mean, that's just a glimpse. I know you're not seeing it all like, super clear, but it's a fun, interesting book. A lot of world building to this, like that's a big part, I think, of the fantasy is having a world where you have to explain the rules and exactly how this all works. And that's what we're really starting to get into by issues 4 and 5. I find that interesting.
And hopefully you're seeing it and instead of having it told to you.
Right.
The idea is it's very masturbatory to get too deep into your lore. And so I always try to make sure that like I know what the story is and what the world is and what the characters are. And I know the world building, but I just say, but take your time. There's no rush.
Yeah.
And let people explore the world and find it with the characters, as opposed to a info dump of 75 wars and 20 people, 6 goblets, 2 goblins, like.
Keep going. No,
I just cooked up a whole new book. There's 6 goblins in a chalice.
And now that we know about how long it takes to plan it, by 2030, we can expect that's
crazy. Your
kid that's like 15 now is going to be drawing it.
It's not. I mean, well, look. I mean, he is I make the first arcs to me feel like you're up against a wall of other books, and in the last 5 years, you've got 20 new puppy mills just spewing 4-issue miniseries into the world. So now creator owned is sort of inundated with the same problems that mainstream comics were, in that there's just this torrent of mediocrity, and it's a bummer, and it makes it really hard to stand out,
Sure.
So I feel like, and I hope, taking the time we do on something like Sacrificers, where Max is able to, hey Jimmy,
Jim says he wants to draw that new 6 Goblin Chalice book.
He's the only person who could. It's me. It's Jim all the way.
That sounds great.
I'll be in touch.
Yeah.
But so it's like because of that, giving the artist the time that they need to make it something that's a testament to their abilities, something that they're always going to be able to point to and go, that's what I can do if I have the time to do it, is really important to me. As I'm folding up a pamphlet and throwing it into that hurricane, at least I can say that we bled ourselves dry on it, and it's at least the best we were able to do.
I love it. Big fan. It was really tough seeing sci-fi not continue with Deadly Class. I'm sure it was tougher for you and the people involved, because that was actually that was the best thing I'd seen on sci-fi in 20 years.
Which was the idea. Everyone's, guys, we're going to fix a network. And I was like, maybe. There was a time it was going to follow Mr. Robot, because our wonderful executive Alex Epiel, who had developed Suits and Mr. Robot and Deadly Class, and it was going to follow Mr. Robot, and I was like, oh well, it's a hit. It's going to be great. Everything's going to be great. And after that, it can have a second streaming window on Netflix. It'll find its audience, and everything's going to be great. And then the idea was that, hey, we're going to, Mr. Robot did so much good for USA. We want you to do that with Deadly Class on Sci-Fi. And I said, I just don't. If it were Fear Agent and we had an $80 million budget on Sci-Fi and do a Battlestar Galactica level quality show, maybe. It just always felt very weird to me. But at the same time, you've got these wonderful people that are taking a chance to give you $55 million to go off and make a season from your books, which I got to creatively shepherd and showrun, and had Joe Russo teach me how to edit and do the showrun job. I'd done the showrun in animation. Now I got to do it in live action.
I was just going to sort of ask if it what kind of good takeaways there were from the experience, because it was a great adaptation. It didn't continue, but it was a great season. It was a really solid adaptation. Great directors, good music choices. I'm sure that was you, and or at least partially you, right? And
no, it was all me. I was in the edit. Anybody had a music option, and I was like, no, wrong. How about Love Will Tear Us Apart? No, if we're gonna do Joy Division, we're not doing Love Will Tear Us Apart. We're gonna go deeper cuts, because I'm an elitist.
Yes, absolutely. I can't see. But were there some good takeaways from there that you're able to move forward?
God, it was it's 3 years of my life, and it was a dream come true that I never really thought would happen, and it enabled me to I've got 3 other shows in development right now. I'm writing 3 other pilots right now, and they're actively moving down towards a green light. So we'll see. But it not only enabled me to show people that I can do that job, which enables me now to take the books and very surgically and carefully kind of take them to market with people like, Seth and Evan, Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg doing Fear Agent, or the Russos on Deadly Class, or Cary Fukunaga on Tokyo Ghost, and now Andy Samberg, in the Holy Roller. It allowed me to take those pieces and attract very big talent, and to very surgically take it out and not go. Comic book creators a lot of time make the mistake of allowing other people to just take their shit in a box and run around town and dump it out on their feet and be like, here's some things. And they're like, that's trash. I don't want that. You have to very carefully put it together and spend months getting the pitch ready and very carefully, surgically go out with it. So doing Deadly Class enabled me to be taken seriously and doing that further. But more than that, it was a point in time in my life where, coming out of Marvel, I was sort of soul shattered and getting attacked for things that were, that I hadn't even said or done online was like happening, because that was like the era of Twitter attacks, and that stuff really took its toll on me. It was really kind of heartbreaking. And so, and then my time at Marvel was very frustrating, and that I knew if we could only listen, but it didn't work out. So I quit in Marvel in the middle of a contract. I moved to Hollywood, and I started pitching. And that seems, when I was whatever it was, 42, that doesn't seem like the smartest thing in the world. So Deadly Class happening, and the way it happened, and being fully involved until the point where when it was clear that I was running the creative, that Joe got my back, and I took on the creative showrun job. It was with a group of people that I loved being around, a cast of kids that were so goddamn enthusiastic and wonderful. Everybody was so happy. And I used all my experience in animation and in art, where you trust people to, if you're good at your job, trust them to do it, and then talk to them about it, instead of micromanaging or holding my hand on the back of their neck. And I wasn't very good at delegating. I ended up doing too much of the writing and burning myself out, sitting on set typing at 5 a.m. But it was nothing but great
passion.
And there's so many things in Deadly Class that are true life stories of my own. That was the original idea. It was called Reagan Youth, and it was just me and all my punker friends. And it was like the gearheads, the hip hop kids, the punkers, and all the kids in the parking lot smoking cigarettes at lunch. Because we used to have a smoking area at the high school.
Just a different era that we grew up in. I know. My high school had that too.
It's nuts.
This is where you smoke.
Oh, we had a smoking area by the pool parking lot. But so telling those stories and then seeing them filmed, and then seeing all of the actors would come and be like, "Is this one real?" And I'd be like, "Yeah." Like, "Tell me more." Yeah. And it was just this enthusiastic, lovely group of people, down to the editors who we all became close friends with. And it was heartbreaking. Yeah, it was because of all of that, because of the community and the family that it formed at that point in time. Having that experience punctuated by, a death in the family and a bunch of other horrible shit happening. And then 2 months later, COVID. And then it was just like off to the races. And I went out to dinner with some friends in a theater show last night. And I just realized, like, I think I'm just now starting to feel like a people again. From all that. So that era was a heavy juxtaposition in how much I loved that era of my life versus the last 3-4 years, which not as much.
It's interesting, as somebody who's followed your work for a while, to see you start to pull from some of these experiences you had. Some people may not know that. Yes, you worked in animation, Iron Giant and stuff, and that was some experience in Hollywood. You're starting to get a little back into that. But of course, you also grew up a skater, and we've got grommets coming up. I know it's going to be exciting to see you get back to something that's just so personal from your youth.
It's all these things coming out now are like COVID babies.
Yeah. Okay.
I was like Ernie Ray Clementine in The Scumbag got me through COVID in the pandemic era. I was just having, and it was, I still look at him. Everyone's like, "What's your favorite book?" I go, "Read The Scumbag." I go, "There's nothing better Even though
it's funny, Rick, like, I swear I'm like reading that and I go, like, some of this stuff is like darker than like Low or something like that. There's something very dark about what's going on here.
Well, it's processing the polarization and this sort of extremities taking over the country, and any voice that doesn't line up with the new moral authority on the post-liberal left or the right national insanity and the Trumpers, you either had to pick you're like, wait, there's a million ideas. And I liked putting the person in the midst of that debate as a 1979 coked out Iron Maiden Lemmy lookalike who had the power to save the world. And so it is dark, but the world was dark. And so it was my trying to write jokes about that and have a humorous take at a time when everyone was like, you can't make jokes. You can't do jokes. There's no more jokes.
I think my audience has had a ton of great questions. I was just amused by this. Don't worry. I'll deal with this. Does Rick understand his responsibility in having some of the best hair in the comics? That's your response. But here's another good one. Do you still draw? And actually, I guess I don't. Are you still do you doodle for fun? Do you draw pages?
I was talking with Bengal and I were working on covers today, and I'll do that's about as much. I'll do layouts and I'll do things and I still doodle, and I have a dry erase board at the office that I'll pull out, and I'll go over there and stand and doodle. And
you should post that stuff to your socials then.
Yeah,
that would be interesting to me. I don't know.
I don't know. I think that art got ruined for me in a way that 12, 13 years as a professional artist, and then writing was what I did to blow off steam. I wrote comic books like Captain Dingleberry and Blackheart Billy, and wrote in my journals just to joyfully escape art that had become this crushing. I was around the best artists in the world, and I'm good. I'm good. I'm a good artist. I'm not those guys. And so it was just always this you're not good. You're not Eric Canetti. You're not you're not Jerome Pena. You're not these guys. And I was just and that somehow when you turn the love of a thing into a vocation, and suddenly there is money, and you're living in a garage with, my wife at the time was sick, and it just sucked all the joy out of it. Whereas writing, it was this escape thing I did that then people loved, and it took off. And suddenly, between, Fear Agent led to me writing the video game Dead Space, which led to me, getting a job at Marvel, which led to and writing is still this real joyful, expressive thing that never, even though I do, 8 pages a day, and I never slow down, it still hasn't lost the love. But not being as good an artist as the other people in my orbit, just that coupled with those struggling years, I don't know, killed the joy a little bit.
It can be work, but you have to enjoy it on some level. So, if you are sincerely getting pleasure out of writing, that's nice to hear, because I think it does show through. I really do. I'm enjoying your stuff. I've already taken up more of your time than I really intended to. You've been really generous with us.
I love talking to you, Chris. One of the best conversations I had during the pandemic was that podcast with you.
That was fun. Thank you for that. And I don't know, is there anything that we should be on the lookout for? I mean, I know that we've got Sacrificers and Holy Roller. Is there anything else that I'm not thinking of right now that Giant Generator has coming up in the next week or two?
No, not in the next week. We've got a Deadly Class compendium coming out in a few weeks. Oh, and I'm sorry, I'm wrong. Hey, Chris, I'm bad at promotion, it turns out.
I'm trying to set you up for it.
There are 3 oversized deluxe hardcovers of Black Science that has been out of print. We sold the pandemic. Sold through 10,000 of each of those, and we didn't go back to print because of anyway, it was a problem time. And now we're back to print, brand new covers by Matteo Scalera and Moreno Dionisio, beautifully, put together with all of the best paper. We basically don't make much money on these hardcovers because we print them in the biggest format you can on the best paper.
And we sell them cheaper than the average, omnibuses and compendiums.
The mainstream companies charge twice as much, and they print it on toilet paper. And so we do things that try to, honor the art as much as possible and give people a book that, if they're into that series, is, it feels substantive when they're reading it. And
a lot of people are excited, just dropping comments about
that's super nice.
Books that they like, and that the hardcovers you guys are putting out are nice. So
thanks everybody. Nice. Yeah, and yeah, that's right. Somebody mentioned Fear Agent. So
Fear Agent hardcover coming out.
as
Black Science about to come out, like big compendiums.
Your Agent, Black Science came out a couple weeks ago, and
excuse me.
We've been blowing those out the door. It's the nice thing when they haven't been in stock for a while is everybody's been excited to get their hands on them. And then Fear Agent, we also did it. So the Black Science was a 10-year anniversary hardcover. The Fear Agent are 20-year anniversary hardcovers, which we did an A and a B, brand new cover by Tony Moore for volume 1 and 2, brand new covers by Jerome Pena for cover.
That's exciting. I don't see enough by Tony in terms of comics, so I'm excited about that.
That's and they're two of his very
Jerome's
best.
Incredible, but yeah.
And Jerome's incredible. Like they're both magic men. And so those are coming out and followed by the Deadly Class Compendium, which is like that thick. And it's every issue, 56, 57, 58 issues of Deadly Class and one over. And we kept the price down pretty low on that too. To try to go like, hey, you've heard about it. You haven't bought the trades. Here's a brick. And so the Deadly Class hardcovers are back in print, the compendium, low compendium, Black Science compendium. The books keep selling, so we're very, very, very fortunate. Thank you all for reading them and caring. I love you very much.
That really big one you're talking about, Rick?
Yeah.
I'd love for you to make a video showing us exactly the most comfortable way we're supposed to physically read that.
The good news is it's not oversized, so it's comic book size. So have you ever read Bone in that format? Because my kids got Bone in that big. So it's like the Bone book. It's
the oversized things. Sometimes I sit down at the couch and then I'm like, well, this doesn't feel right. And like I get in bed and like lay down sideways and I'm like flipping it like this. I was like, well, this is a weird angle. I don't know how much.
I found the secret. The secret is your stomach. So I've got a little bit of a gut these days and it's a little shelf and I can rest the big books on my stomach and I go, there, that's why I did that to myself.
It's for comics. You do this to your body for the love of comics.
For ease of reading and the love of comics. So yeah, those are coming out. And then February, my new book with Bengal, Napalm Lullaby, which again we've been working on for 6 years now. Really excited to show everybody that. Big things happening with Death or Glory right now that I can't talk too much about, but it's going to be a good year to be Bengal, and it's going to be a good year to be me teamed up with Bengal and get to show people all this stuff, and hopefully more people get exposed to Death or Glory coming out because I think it's one of the very best things that have been produced in a long time, if not for simply just the art.
Yeah,
because I can't say it's one of the best things, in regards to like the writing, because that would be like highly narcissistic. But I like it a lot. So if anybody hasn't bought it, the hardcovers are back in print. How's that? Self-promotion.
That's pretty good promotion. You're getting better. Do a few more of these and you'll be like, at a B-. I was going to say something, but then I got lost with my hilarious riff. Oh, I know what I want to say. Let's close with this and I'll let you go. You've worked with so many amazing artists. We've just listed like a dozen. Is there anyone else out there that you're still actively trying to find a project for where you're like, boy, I just would love to work with that one artist anywhere in the world? I mean, you're finding people in Europe and Asia and stuff. Or is there anyone that we should that we should just go yeah, that's a good artist?
Yeah.
And we should know.
Well, yeah, I mean, I announced, so obviously I don't know. I mean, should I say this?
Probably.
I think it matters. I shouldn't announce it. I am doing another book with an A+ level artist that's very exciting, but I can't announce it. But obviously, I'm doing a new book with Tokini, and he's painting every page, and so we're deep into that. Daniel Acuna is painting our new book, and he is deep into that, and it is absolutely spectacular. Unique Paquette and Dave McCaig and I are doing this book that's going to blow people away with what he has been doing. I mean, I could go on. I
know. I don't want you to feel like you're leaving somebody out. I didn't know if you were going to just go Chris, your readers and viewers should find this one website where blah, blah, blah is. It doesn't matter.
I do have those, but it's almost like giving away where I dig for treasure.
All right. That's fair. You don't want to give away all your trade secrets. I'm surprised.
I am a greedy goblin. I like to find artists that people aren't
dozens of views.
Say again?
This will have literally dozens of views. All right. Rick, I'll let you go so you can be with your family. But thank you so much for taking some time to talk with all of us tonight. I really appreciate it.
Anytime, Chris.
It's always excited to see what you got.
Okay, thanks, dude.
Take care.
Okay, see you.
folks, sorry, that was exciting for me. Oh man, I love Rick. Rick is just a really talented writer, I think. But he's also, I feel, very kind. I think he's hilarious to hang out with and just really, really funny. But yeah, he confirmed that I'm not misremembering. If we go back and listen to old Brian Posehn stand-up albums, there's definitely a bit where Brian Posehn blasts Last Christmas at Rick Remender, and there's a story there. So go pull those old Brian Posehn albums. Meanwhile, oh, thanks, Nick, and always nice to have you here. And Nick is, of course, the head of Dynamite, and has been putting me in touch with a couple really talented people that they work with. So I may have some more interviews in January in this show, like to start the show off. I mean, I always intend for it to be like a 20-minute conversation and go way too long. I'm sorry. It's just I have trouble. I gotta focus. Steve, thank you for the super chat. Happy holidays, troopers. Give vid a like. Oh, that would be nice. That would be nice. Let's add some news. We've got some news, folks. We've got some news. There's Mr. Christmas, as I call him. But we're gonna start with this. Wow, this broke earlier today, and this happened fast. But now that I didn't want to talk about the Jonathan Majors lawsuit while it was going on because it's just idle speculation. But it's been settled. So thank you for the compliments, folks. Let's see. So just earlier today, this morning, this is hot goss. A New York jury did find Majors guilty of an assault charge. Not every charge, but he was found guilty of one of his assault charges. You hate to hear it. Disney acted swiftly. They have released him from his MCU contract. He will not be playing Kang anymore. So that is what happened. No word yet. This is happening this morning, so no word yet if the MCU will either recast Kang. Obviously, they have plans up until today to use Kang as the villain for the next 2 Avengers films, do some multiverse stuff. What are they going to recast? Are they going to completely rewrite that? It's tough. Tough decision, obviously, for the company. I like Kang, actually. I think Kang it can be an interesting villain. I don't think that they utilized him fantastic in Ant-Man 3. He's generally, I feel, a little more powerful than that. I do think he's an Avengers level threat. So I would lean towards recasting, but it's a business decision. And who knows? Yeah, story-wise, you're right. It's easy to recast. Does somebody sort of want to take over that role, or is that poisoned? I really don't know. We'll see. But that's what happened this morning. Since it's related to comics movies, I thought I would at least acknowledge that, and we'll move forward, I guess. Yeah, the MCU has recast roles before, so it's not unheard of. This would be the first time they're letting somebody go for a reason. Now, some actors do have a clause when there's sequels and stuff that they essentially have sort of first right of refusal, or sometimes it's called a pay or play deal. Famously, Billy D. Williams had that when he was hired as Harvey Dent for the 1989 Batman movie. And so when they actually decided to cast Tommy Lee Jones as Two-Face in Batman Forever, they still had to pay Billy D. Williams for that. That's expensive. But there is often a clause that things can be terminated for, lawsuits or immorality. So even if there was sort of an obligation, to give the role first to Majors, it's very likely that Marvel would be allowed to just terminate his contract and cast somebody else. He got paid. All right, moving on. Webtoon has expanded. So you probably at least heard of Webtoon if you don't read from them, because they're just humongous. Webtoon's the world's largest webcomics publisher. This week, they announced plans to expand their leadership team with a focus on growing their international readership. If you're not aware, Webtoon is based in South Korea under a company called Naver. So basically, this is another statistic that's been out there that global webcomics, it's projected to be a $50 billion industry by 2030. So there's a lot of potential money there. A lot of countries are starting to really get into webcomics. South Korea and Japan, people really like webcomics, especially actually the older generation. I say older, I'm talking 40s, 50s into the 60s. So one of the big hirings was consumer and technology industry executive David J. Lee. I think he worked for Zynga before. He joined Webtoon as their chief financial officer and chief operating officer. And they had some other promotions. But the overall reason I bring this up is webcomics are definitely a growing part of the industry. Expect to hear more about them and see more people getting into this world. There's money there, so expect that. Oh, cool. Super chat. Thank you so much. Never Not Nervous. I really enjoy your content, Chris. Thank you for all the hard work you put into it. Have a Merry Christmas. I will do my best. You do the same. Well, Clay, the 50 billion, I forget exactly which company did the numbers on that, but they even had, like, you know, the rate that it's expected to increase versus like balancing that against you know, like what do you call it, like not interest, but like, you know, the what do you call it when like money, like costs go up over time? All of a sudden I'm blanking. Good Lord. I've been like just ultra focused on these comics, and now I'm forgetting like basic business. Something like CGNAR. I forget. Webcomics do make a lot of money right now. Inflation. Thank you, everybody. Jesus. Wow. Basic term. Everybody's telling me. Yeah. Inflation. Sorry, everyone. Even with inflation taken into account, like, or maybe especially because of it, you know, 50 billion doesn't mean like one company is making a 50 billion profit. They are talking about all global webcomics with what we know now. That's what we're talking about, like, you know, would be spent. Dollars spent. Moving on. That's enough business stuff. Let's talk about Bryan Hitch, an artist I really like. I love it. So he posted this to Twitter. First of all, some really gorgeous tight pencils here. And he says, since Superman was the character who first sparked my passion for comics and movies and orchestral music, I can't think of anything more fitting than a truly brilliant, I think he means than a truly brilliant Superman story is my last work-for-hire project. Yeah. So he posted that The Last Days of Lex Luthor, that's a 3-issue series that he's doing with Mark Waid as the writer. That's going to be his last work-for-hire project, as in he's done doing Marvel and DC type stuff. He wants to just focus at this point on his own creator-owned ideas. More power to him. If you're not familiar, you know, Bryan Hitch at this point has been in the industry for a very long time. Very influential. Certainly his work on the Ultimates definitely gave the blueprint for how the MCU would look. There's no question in my mind about that. He's also done other stuff outside of comics. He designed the TARDIS for Doctor Who when it came back in 2005. He designed the Enterprise for J.J. Abrams films. So he's got, you know, like he can take work for hire paydays and get paid quite handsomely. But I think he's ready to just focus on his own stuff. So he posted also to Instagram, and he said that he's more creatively energized than he has been in years with his upcoming work for Ghost Machine. It's promising. hope that that's true, that that's not just talk. No reason to necessarily doubt him. I think that an artist or a writer or any sort of creative who is engaged with their work is going to produce overall their best work. That's just a fact. How many of you out there are fans of Bryan Hitch? You know, I know some people don't love that super realistic style. I like the way Hitch does it. It's realistic, but it's not stiff and overly referenced, in my opinion. I hope Hitch works with a writer on his new creator-owned properties. Okay, fair. Hitch can do pretty much whatever he wants, in my opinion. He's more than earned it. That's true. Did you learn more about what happened to John Cassidy's artwork since last week? I didn't hear anything else. I heard Bleeding Cool tried to reach out to him. I haven't seen any follow-up articles. I just hope it's not health related. But I don't that's wild speculation on my part. That's right. He did. What was that? Like Hulk Unleashed or something like that? That's right. He did do work on that. Oh man, no question. Such a good matchup. Kevin Nolan, honestly, inks on anybody is gonna look good. Kevin Nolan is fantastic, but works really well with somebody like Bryan Hitch, no question. Call Rick back and tell him to hire this man immediately. Well, he's already done something with Ghost Machine, so I don't. Also, I don't think you might think I tell Rick what to do. That's definitely not the case. Rick's not listening to me for advice on anything. I could just tell him this is the best ham sandwich, and he'd be like, "Please, Chris, I'm talking with some other professionals." Anyway, I'll move on. Todd McFarlane's toys. He is teaming up with Hasbro. A little interesting because it's two toy companies, but also interesting because, of course, McFarlane is a comics creator. So this week, the McFarlane Toys and Hasbro collaboration was announced, and it will see new figures released as part of McFarlane's Page Punchers line. And those are this is why it's comic related. Page Punchers are like smaller figures. Usually sometimes he makes like the 6-inch or 7-inch figures, but a lot of them are like a small figure and some play features with a comic book. So yeah, this one says that it's going to come with a full comic book and 2 articulated figures each. It's expected to launch in early 2024. The collaboration is going to begin with Transformers and G.I. Joe. Let's just be clear. I mean, Transformers and G.I. Joe is with Skybound. Skybound publishes through Image. McFarlane publishes through Image. I would have to imagine we're talking about Energon Universe toys with the recent comics by guys like Joshua Williamson and Daniel Warren Johnson. Well, the Page Punchers have generally been about $20. I think that a good value for the Page Punchers are their new Pacific Rim toys, if you haven't seen those. It's a comic book, either a Jaeger or a Kaiju, a building that will like break into like 3 pieces, and then some like tiny like tanks or jets or something. Oh, and like a block, a city block that like you can put everything on. So that's a decent amount for $20 in my opinion. Hopefully it's something close to that. We'll see. We'll see. Yes. That's me, ham sandwich. That's what they call me. I'm always telling people which is the best ham sandwich. No one ever listens. Someday. I'm McFarlane Barbie. The same amount of articulation. We'll see. I like G.I. Joe. I have fondness, nostalgia for Transformers and love the current Transformers comic. I'm potentially interested. You know, we're likely talking about a figure with like basic articulation, but possibly really good sculpting and painting. Hopefully Larry Hama won't fire Todd McFarlane again like he did off issue 61. Yeah, I made an episode about that once, Kevin, but that's a good point. Yeah, if you ever want to look up like sort of, I think it's called Rare G.I. Joe Comics. It might be the title of the Comic Tropes episode I made. And yeah, there was a whole issue that Todd McFarlane drew of G.I. Joe. Didn't meet standards. They hired Marshall Rogers to completely draw from scratch the issue. And then later, when Todd McFarlane became really popular, Marvel released it as like sort of a special release. But it was, yeah. And I would say that Marshall Rogers was more readable. It's interesting. Oh, yeah. Additional page puncher toys, including Power Rangers and Dungeons and Dragons franchises, are supposed to follow at a later time. We'll see. Vault Comics brews beer? What are we talking about there? Well, I mean, sort of gives it away with this image, doesn't it? Barbaric is definitely a book that I think has made a good amount of waves as far as a more indie comic goes. It definitely looks great. It reads well. It's a fun comic if you haven't read it. It's a really good comic. But yeah, so Vault has teamed up with Buckle Down Brewing, I can say it right, to produce a pale ale tying in with the Michael Morecci and Nathan Gooden book, Barbaric. Blood Red Ale, they call it. Blood Red Ale. So it debuts exclusively at Chicagoland Binny's Beverage Depot, some sort of local store there, as a 4-pack. You can also get it at Buckle Down's tap room on draft. Buckle Down is a company in the Chicago area. So if anybody's in that area, maybe you want to try out some comic book themed Blood Red Ale. Could be fun. If it was local to me, I would try it out. And I don't generally drink beer anymore. I really shouldn't. I'm diabetic, so it's under control, but I really shouldn't cheat. So I don't know. But I would try it. Tell you what indie comic, not like mainstream superhero, what indie comic do you think should also have a themed alcoholic beverage? It could be wine, it could be a mixed drink. Like what comic do you think should have an alcoholic beverage as a tie-in? Radiant Black Rum. That sounds fun. Let's see. Rat Queens. All right, that makes some sense. Yeah. Comics are like bacon, they go with everything. Luba. Okay. All right. Paste Pot Pilsner. Nope, that's mainstream. My favorite comic right now is Petrolhead. So Petrolhead could have some drinks. Invincibeer, The Boys. Yeah. Where Monsters Lie. Hellboy, he drinks with skeletons. There should be a Conan beer, Jikaro just said. Tank Girl Everclear. That sounds dangerous. Love and Rockets Rum. Hell Brew. Stray Bullets Bourbon, did someone say? Wow. Yeah, Conan absolutely does. No question. Anyway, that was fun. Thank you, guys. Awesome Comics Ale. Uzumaki Sake. Yes. You guys have some good ideas there. All right. Moving forward, that was just a fun one. These are some X-Men action figures coming out that were announced this week, and obviously they sort of hint at what they might be doing in X-Men 97. Let me explain. So, Marvel Legends released images of some of their upcoming X-Men figures, and a lot of them are just, they look like the X-Men did in their classic 90s cartoon. X-Men 97 is coming to Disney Plus. It's sort of a continuation. They got back the original voice actors and stuff like that. Pre-orders for these figures are for early 2024, and a cartoon is set for a similar time. Obviously, this implies that the upcoming cartoon could have adaptations of both Executioner's Song. That's a deep pull. Probably not many people remember the Executioner. And maybe a little better known, Madeline Pryor as the Goblin Queen would imply potentially some sort of adaptation of Inferno. Interesting. Yeah, almost spelled right. Drop the E in between there. Just Executioner. The whole Goblin Queen story is a lot of mind-warping surrealism, like when Cyclops takes apart her face. Geez, I don't remember that specific moment. That is Baby Cable. Yes, that is Baby Cable. Madeline Pryor was the woman that married Cyclops. They had a baby together. And then Marvel editorial decided that they wanted the original X-Men back. They were going to start a new book called X Factor with the 5 original X-Men. Wasn't a problem for most of the characters. They had a story in mind for how to revive Jean Grey. Not sure if I agree with that or not, but you did get some more good Phoenix stories after that, so fine. But it definitely broke the Cyclops character for a while because they had to have him basically just all of a sudden become a deadbeat dad. He walked out on Madeline Pryor and his baby to rejoin his original team. And, Jean Grey was his true love. But he had a kid. It was pretty bad. It was pretty bad. But I'm sure you're all just, jonesing for that Executioner. Oh, yeah, that's what it... Sorry, he was called Executioner. I think it was called... There was the Extinction Agenda and Executioner's Song. I think that they were back-to-back for storyline. Yeah, he just left her. It was like... It wasn't something that Chris Claremont wanted to do as the writer. It was really a decision from editorial, and he had to make it work the best he could. So that was how they sort of eventually came up retroactively with Mr. Sinister, made Madeline Pryor as a clone, and there was all this like sort of evil shenanigans behind the scenes to manipulate Cyclops into doing these things. But originally, no, Cyclops was supposed to just get a happy ending. He was supposed to meet a woman, marry her, and retire. That was the original plan. Not a bad plan. IDW is celebrating their 25th anniversary. So this is a new logo. This is a catalog. Let me talk about it. 2024. Obviously, just days away at this point. That's going to be IDW's 25th anniversary. And so they shared this new logo that they'll be using for the year to celebrate that. That's a big accomplishment. It's, the people that founded IDW have moved on. It's a different company now, but IDW's published a lot of good comics over the years. And it's an interesting success story in the sense that if we go back 25 years from 2024, that means they were starting in 99. Remember, the comic book industry just cratered in 1996, just absolutely died off. So it was a weird time to start up a new independent publisher at the time. That showed a lot of courage. And I really respect the people that founded it. And IDW still has some good stuff. They've got Ninja Turtles, Godzilla, stuff like that. So they've got a few things, Star Trek, and a couple original things. But yeah. So this was designed by the director of design, Nate Wittick. Should give him credit if I'm talking about this. And it's worth noting that they'll use the logo here in this catalog that they'll begin publishing so that retailers can order their books. I guess I'm not 100% sure since I'm not a retailer. I believe that they've had it like online or something lately. And that's, from what I hear, the online ordering is just a total hassle for store, for business stores. So, local comic shops. Good luck, IDW. This one cracked me up. DC has made plans for April. I guess is sort of an April Fool's Day themed thing. What am I talking about? They are going to make a 48-page April special. It's a bit of an anthology with stories by John Layman, Joshua Hale Fialkov. Haven't seen him since the sort of early days of New 52, I believe, at DC. But he's a writer I really like. Gene Lun Yang, art by Carl Mustard. Phil Hester is great. Bernard Chang. If we look at this, we see the Monkey Prince. We see Chimp Detective, Titano, Gorilla Grodd, Gleep, Ape from Angel and the Ape, Beppo the Super Monkey, I believe, is this one. And I'm trying to remember this guy. He doesn't have a gorilla name, I don't think, in his name. What is it? He's the white... Oh, I forget. He's just like a super genius guy. I forget. And then this is a variant cover over here. Why do they have a variant cover? Well, let's see. Bernard Chang's variant cover will have a banana scent to it. This is a scratch and sniff cover, folks. This is Dan Mora's cover. But yeah. Oh, wait. This is by Hayden Sherman. Yeah, sorry. This is by Hayden Sherman, I think. And that one is the one that will have the banana scratch and sniff scent. Ultra Humanite. That's the one I was looking for. Thank you so much, Victor. Yes, I've got some I've got a gorilla episode. Very fun to talk about the history of how popular gorillas were, especially at DC Comics. Yes, pretty amazing, isn't it, Mike? It's pretty amazing. It's pretty good. Apes! Yes, Ultra Humanite can move, has put his brain in different bodies. He prefers a big white gorilla. Yeah, scratch and sniff takes me back. So, last week we had the King Kong Justice League variant cover that did the Godzilla roar and the King Kong roar. Now they've got an ape cover with a banana scent. Cobra Commander 1. Cobra Commander 1 just set a G.I. Joe Comics record. You can probably guess what record that is. But yeah, set in the Energon universe, it has got 80,000 copies in initial pre-orders. That's before we do any reprints or anything. That is darned close to 100,000, which with reprints, Void Rivals and Transformers have definitely crossed. Looks like Duke and Cobra Commander might do the same. So this Energon universe is definitely selling pretty darn well these days. Pretty darn well. The previous record for G.I. Joe was set with Duke #1 from the month before, 70,000 copies in initial pre-orders. I'm sure that will go up. By the way, this issue is said to have some sort of a crossover element with Transformers #4. Exactly what, I don't know, but we are seeing the Ark, I believe, on the cover. I am just speculating on this based on a G.I. Joe classified action figure that's already out. There's one called Mole Rat, and he's infected with Dark Energon, it said. So I suspect that the Cobra organization, maybe in these comics, they could potentially be mining a material called Dark Energon to power their weapons, their hiss tanks or the mass device or something like that. That's speculation, but if you're going to cross over, but you don't necessarily want, every week, robots fighting people, something like Dark Energon could be a link, just from world building perspective. Let's see. Got a coworker into Energonverse, loves Daniel Warren Johnson. That's so nice to hear. Thank you very much for the super chat. Oh, they're selling so well. Hasbro will probably lay people off. That is frustrating that this week we see things like Hasbro's teaming up with McFarlane Toys for this new G.I. Joe and Transformers. Their comics are selling better than they ever have before. This week, like just weeks before the holidays, Hasbro laid off thousands of employees. Really crappy. Really, really crappy. I did get the HasLab Hiss Tank. It's massive. It's absolutely massive. This book, Cobra Commander #1, that we're talking about, written by Joshua Williamson. Did an interview with him on Comic Tropes. Very fun to talk to him. Artist Andrea Milana. It's going to kick off the second of, this is the first I've heard this. This was in the official description. The second of 4 action-packed miniseries that will introduce the best and worst humanity has to offer in the Energon universe. So when they say 4 action-packed miniseries, are they talking about Void Rivals, Transformers, Duke, and Cobra Commander? Or are they specifically talking about G.I. Joe here with Duke, Cobra Commander, and like maybe 2 more G.I. Joe titles? I do not know. I really cannot tell by that description. Maybe I'm the only one confused. I don't know. Maybe the Page Puncher's going to include Skybound or IDW Comics. No word yet. So far, all we know is that it's Hasbro and McFarlane Toys. So no announcements for Page Punchers with any other stuff yet. I'd be up for it. I'll get a comic with a little toy for $20. It's decent. Let's see. When you read these comics, do you think of the music from the cartoon shows? I don't always think of the music, but sometimes I think of some of the voices. You know, I think that the Snake Eyes voice from the cartoon is the one that's in my head when Snake Eyes is on the page. Okay, that's a joke. That's a joke. Snake Eyes doesn't talk. I definitely think of Cobra Commander's voice. It's pretty darn iconic. It's pretty iconic. Moving on. Going to try to go at a good pace because there's some comics I want to talk about. And obviously that interview it took up a good chunk of the show. I had a great time. Batman Dark Age. Batman Dark Age is a new comic by the Superman Space Age team. Superman Space Age was a really enjoyable, interesting comic from this past year. I'll explain. So, Mark Russell as writer and Mike Allred as artist. They're going to reteam to do a 6-issue series called Batman Dark Age. And what is that? Each issue is going to be, first of all, 40 pages. So this is a pretty big story, honestly. It's going to recount Batman's origin and his life set against real-world historical events. That's basically what Superman Space Age did as well. Like the characters aged. It was set in the past, and it like kind of caught up to closer to major modern day. Yes, Tim, I love having you here, but I did start off the news segment with the Jonathan Majors story, so you can either rewind or wait till it's over. But yeah, it says 40 issues. That's a mistype by me. Sorry, 40 pages. 40 pages. Each issue is 40 issues. Every issue is another 40 issues. It just, and then you open that one, 40 more issues. It's the ultimate. I meant 40 pages. Excuse me. Look, we've obviously seen Batman's origin a million times, but the idea of showing him aging and setting it against actual real world events, that's interesting. It worked really well for Superman Space Age. That was a fascinating comic. Issue 1 for this is set for March 26th. I'm going to pick it up. I love Mike Allred no matter what, and Mark Russell has impressed me. Here's a book we heard about initially years ago. It's finally going to be available in English. Let me explain. Yes, it is a little bit like Spider-Man Life Story by Chip Zdarsky. Who drew that? Was it Mark Bagley? I think it was Mark Bagley that drew that. And it worked really well for Spider-Man. The one difference I'll say is Spider-Man Life Story sort of would jump ahead 10 years and they would, and Spider-Man would be older, and they would sort of tell for that era, whether it was the 70s, the 60s, the 80s, the 90s, all that stuff, like they'd sort of remix his most popular storylines that were actually told in that era. Whereas Superman Space Age was a little bit more about actually having real world events happen and take place. So like, you know, in the Batman Dark Age, you might be more likely to see things like the Cuban Missile Crisis or the Berlin Wall coming down, things like that, as compared to like remixing Nightfall with Bane or something like that. That's the little bit of a difference, but it is still got some interesting stuff with the character aging. And for Superman, his age wasn't as much of a big deal, but the people around him were still aging. So it was cool. It was really good. Oh, I didn't read Fantastic Four Life Story. I did not know about that. Huh. Probably would not have Batman versus 9/11 because Holy Terror by Frank Miller already exists. So yeah, let me talk about the Batman Dylan Dog stuff. Batman. Everybody wants Batman news. This crossover with the U.S. superhero and the Italian supernatural detective. I've made an episode, by the way, about Dylan Dog. Really cool comic. I have not read every bit of Dylan Dog because most of it's in Italian. I don't read Italian fluently at all. But very popular character, long running, really, really cool. This crossover was originally announced back in 2018. Okay. Why is Groucho hanging out in the corner? Sounds like somebody hasn't read Dylan Dog before. Yeah, Dylan Dog has an assistant who's called Groucho and looks like Groucho Marx. Can't explain it any more than that. He isn't literally Groucho Marx, but he looks, talks, and acts like him. It can't really be explained. It's just a thing. Good question. Good question. Don't have a good answer. It's just a part of the comic. So this book, this crossover, finally came out in Italy this past year, and it's now coming out in English March 12th. I'm excited. I like Dylan Dog. I'm curious to see this. I was really excited once I saw who one of the artists was going to be. Art by Werther Deladera. Originally signed up quite a while ago, and now very popular for the work on Something is Killing the Children. I think it could be a good fit, actually. Has that European aesthetic, but has worked in American comics. Could work well. Could work well. We will see. The plot involves the Joker traveling to Italy to work with a villain that Dylan Dog has, Professor Zabaris. Again, you'll learn a little bit more about him if you watch my episode on Dylan Dog. Is a guy that can bring the dead back. Dylan Dog it's a little bit like, say, Hellboy, a supernatural detective, but way more horror-based as compared to sort of becoming action-based. Hellboy has some creepy mythology, some really creepy imagery, but will typically turn into like more of a Jack Kirby punch fest at a certain point, and it's a blast. Dylan Dog, way more horror-based. Yeah, it's weird, but it could work. Let's see. If you could cross Batman with any manga anime franchise, which one would do? Death Note? Wow. Yeah, actually, Batman being a detective and tracking down somebody with the Death Note actually sounds fantastic. That's a great idea, Victor. Yeah, a little bit like Constantine, but he isn't quite the scumbag that Constantine is, and he doesn't do magic or really. He's aware of the world, maybe a little bit more of a womanizer. There's a lot of sex or sexiness anyway to this Italian comic. Batman One Piece. Yeah, it's been a while since we've seen a pirate Batman. Batman tracking light sounds pretty sweet. Or somebody new, right? Like there could be another Death Note. I'm not going to top that idea. So I'm not going to try. I'm not going to top that idea. Grant Morrison announced a new comic. I think that that's always worthy of conversation. Grant Morrison, maybe you don't love everything by them, but I think that they have written enough great stuff that it's always interesting to see what Grant has coming out. So they announced this on their Xanadu Substack newsletter. They've got an upcoming comic. Showed this teaser image here called Poison Peach. It's a 15-page one-shot. No, this is not Ashley Wood art. This is art by Liam Sharp. Liam Sharp, who Grant worked with on Green Lantern. So they've worked together. Yeah, 15 pages on the Xanadu newsletter. You have to subscribe to see that kind of stuff. If it's like really popular, some of these ideas that they've been doing as one-shots could potentially come back and expand into something more. But Grant has said that their idea is to keep it like short and sweet, like really like get in, tell a cool story with lots of interesting characters and get out. Like don't overstay the welcome. What's it about? Poison Peach follows the titular villain or character, not villain, just titular character, the spoiled daughter of a supervillain. She's raised in isolation away from the rest of the world. And then when she turns 18, all that Peach wants to do is live like a normal teenager for a day. When her father grants her wish, Peach winds up running off with a washout fast food employee. The two of them are chased by both her father's villainous organization and government agents with their own agenda. Could be a fun road movie romance type story. Could be good. Yeah, exactly. The art looks good, but I like dinosaurs, so maybe I'm biased. Liam Sharp is a really talented artist who it's an interesting evolution. You know, if you look at Liam Sharp's artwork from the 90s, it was very much in the mold of all the artists that were trying to sort of draw like Jim Lee and folks like that, the Image style. But it has evolved over the years, I think, to be a bit more delicate. Does a lot of gorgeous painted work. Really eventually came into their own. Substack isn't too much different than something like Patreon, where you can just sort of pay a monthly subscription fee. It's just that you can either go to the site and read sort of things like as a newsletter or like scroll vertically through like comic pages. You could also have that pushed to you as an email. It's not that different in that regard. Liam Sharp's Hulk run was good with Peter David. Peter David just had a really solid run. Grant Morrison had another comic with Liam Sharp. What was it called, and did it come out in print? It hasn't come out in print. What was it? I know what you're talking about. I think I'd have to Google it. It's not coming to me. Something sort of sci-fi. Might have even had dinosaurs in it. It's right in... Nah, I can't latch onto it right now. I'd have to Google it. Here's another upcoming comic. Obviously, we're hearing about a lot of stuff right before the year ends. Derek Kirk Kim is coming back to comics. Originally had a comic, geez, over 10 years ago now, called... what was it called? I'm going to look this one up. Same Difference. It was an interesting book called Same Difference, which I think was turned into a movie not long ago. So this is called The Last Mermaid, coming out through Image. A lone mermaid roams an endless wasteland, and we're talking more like a desert Mad Max type wasteland or something like out of Dune, on a quest beyond reason. To press ever onward, she must survive the interminable stretches between tiny pockets of water, the roaming bands of cybernetic cannibals, and the fearsome mutant beasts. So she's in some sort of like an armor here so that she can stay in the water, I think. This is said to be like Dune meets mermaids. That's different. I haven't come across that before. And Kim himself said that he's excited to be back in comics after about a decade away working in TV animation. One of the things you probably know, Adventure Time. Worked extensively on Adventure Time, but a bunch of animation. So yeah. Let's see. Sorry. I am absolutely in based on this premise. Dune meets Mermaids is definitely a novel take. Not Mermaids starring Cher, but I can see how you'd come up with that. Mermaid in power armor? Take my money. Def will check that out. It sounded different enough that I was like, cool. I can't like talk about every single upcoming comic, but that one sounds out there. An interesting enough premise that I'm curious to check one out. The idea of like a mermaid just being in like just totally out of her element, not in a place that's safe or anything. And it's cool, Derek Kim, great artist, interesting writer, so should be good. Green Arrow, that comic has been upgraded to an ongoing series. Let's talk about that. This was a tweet that came out this past week from writer Joshua Williamson. He's coming up a bunch today. Let's see. Let's put the rumors to rest. Green Arrow is officially an ongoing series again. A huge thanks to all the amazing Star City citizens out there who made this possible. We're making this book for you, the fans, and I can't wait to show off what Sean Isaacs and I have in store. So, this is interesting just because it was originally planned as a 6-issue series. Then DC upgraded it to a 12-issue series because it was doing well. And now, apparently, it's doing well enough that they have confirmed that it is now an ongoing series. You don't get to always see that. It happens here and there, but having something go from like a mini series to an ongoing, not always a thing these days. That means that it's selling pretty well. Sean Isaacs continues as the artist. He's gotten a lot of good credit for his work on this book. And the story sort of started with Oliver Queen lost, really sort of like lost with aliens and stuff. And his, when I say family, I mean like, all of his various allies, the Black Canary, Arsenal, Speedy, Arrowhead, that whole family uniting to find him and keep Star City safe. I guess that's it for that. Yeah. They used to say 1 of 6 on the cover, but not anymore. No, I think that I think these days that I don't know. I would think it would be a selling point, but obviously the industry does not feel the same, so they don't do that. Yes, great call out there, Kyle. Yes, this did happen with the Poison Ivy book. So that was another book that DC originally was going to do 6 issues. As it was doing well, they expanded it to 12. As it came towards the end of 12, they were like, nope, it is now an ongoing. So that's interesting to see this again. Yeah, I saw that in the news. Charlie Hunnam said that he was asked to play Green Arrow in the movies and that he was like, no interest. Thanks anyway. So I haven't been keeping up with that book, but I do generally enjoy Joshua Williamson's books, so I may pick that up in trade paperback. This is just funny to me. Fortnite players have been recreating a famous Batman meme. If you haven't seen it, this is the original meme, which legit makes me laugh every once in a while. This is where I watched my parents die, Raphael. Cowabummer. The original meme here is started back in 2016. This was a panel in the Ninja Turtles Batman comic without this cowabummer. That was added. There are other things people have added to here. Batman does take Raphael to this and says this, but yeah, like that was a comic. Somebody added cowabummer, which is just so wildly inappropriate that it really cracks me up. Well, now people are recreating this in Fortnite because this week Fortnite added Ninja Turtle skins. You can now look like any of the Ninja Turtles. They already had Batman skins, so people decided to put them side by side and edit in the meme. So it's just people having fun with a meme. It's kind of funny. Raph's face is what cracks me up. I bought Leo. They did a great job making the skins. I've never got any skins or anything. I played Fortnite back when it very first came out. I'm not the most competitive, like on the massive first-person shooter things. Call of Duty and Halo, I did pretty well at. I was competitive at one point, but the things like Fortnite and what else, like Warzone, I feel like I'm just not competitive. So I have not gotten really into Fortnite. I haven't played in a long time. It's amazing how many skins they have out there for different things. Like I guess it's ridiculously popular. Which good for it. Well, I'll put this down here. It's just a meme that cracks me up, though. This is where I watched my parents die. Cow a bummer. So inappropriate. Oh, I said Blackjack movie. I meant TV show. So I'm making a few mistakes here and there, folks. You're catching it. This is the night. I'm making a few mistakes. But I like Blackjack. So, TV Asahi announced this past Saturday that Osamu Tezuka's Blackjack manga is getting a live-action series in 2024. That's cool. The series is going to star Issei Takahashi. He's been in stuff like Shin Godzilla, Rurouni Kenshin. Never read that manga or watched that anime, but obviously has, some background in doing an adaptation of manga before. Anyway, and has actually been an actor for a long time. Started really young. Issei is going to play the Doctor. If you haven't read it, it's a great premise. It's really cool. The manga follows Dr. Blackjack and his assistant, this young girl, Pinoko. He solves medical mysteries. He saves people that are on the brink of death, but he also likes to charge ridiculously high fees. Doesn't always go through with it, by the way. He is moral, but he tries to get a lot of money, and that kind of stuff keeps him exiled and at arm's length from the rest of the medical community. So he isn't really licensed. He just sort of goes around, but he's like the best surgeon in the world, and he can like figure out all sorts of stuff. Rurouni Kenshin is peak. I recommend it. We shall see. Oh, I started watching on Netflix their live-action adaptation of Yu Yu Hakusho, and I know that like not everything has to be adapted, but I gave that a shot, and the fight scenes I think are really well done for TV. I think it's a pretty cool show. We shall see. Oh yeah, I never saw that one. I want to see the live-action Blackjack movie by Nobuhiko Obayashi, aka the director of the 1977 horror film Houseu. Houseu is such a crazy movie, very entertaining, very, very cool. Very, very cool. Almost done. 2 more pieces of news. One is that I'm calling him France's top webcomics, just a super popular webcomics artist from France. This is finally going to be translated to English. Dude! That makes it like pretty hard to want to read. Yikes. That's a yikes. I mean, I try to separate the artist from the art, but there are some things that are like really hard to separate. That sounds brutal. I cannot get behind that. Yikes. But yeah, let me talk about this French webcomic stuff. More comedy stuff. We'll just slide right into something hilarious. Gilles Rousset, better known as Boulet, is a household name in France for his humorous webcomics. Well, Oni is going to have them translated into English for the first time. This book is going to come out June 11th. Here's a little example of sort of just a webcomic there. All sorts of different story things. It's not like an ongoing story, just funny ideas and stuff. Nearly 300 pages this will be of comic strips, cartoons. It's going to be hardcover. All sorts of work from across his 22-year career. So this will be like one of the first times Western audiences will be exposed to a very popular French artist. And of course, bande dessinée is an incredibly important part of comics. Yeah. Thought it was worth pushing that out. Let us wrap it up with this cool thing. Weapon X-Men. Look at this ad. That's a lot of Wolverines. This is a lot of Wolverines. Why? Well, Marvel shared this ad for a new 4-issue series called Weapon X-Men with multiverse Wolverines. So maybe a little bit riffing on that old idea of Exiles, where they would go across the multiverse. Written by Christos Gage, art by Yildiray Sinar, set for March 6th. And we've got the team leader is going to be the Age of Apocalypse Wolverine, the one that like has a stump for his hand because Cyclops blew it off. We've got Marvel Zombies Wolverine. We've got Old Man Logan. We've got Earth X Wolverine from the Alex Ross story. And we've got somebody new, Jane Howlett from Earth 1281. Also, Phoenix is involved somehow. Don't know where it goes from there, but this will spin out of the Christos Gage and Greg Land comic Original X-Men #1 that comes out this week. Sign me up. A bunch of Wolverines in one book. I'll give that a shot. That sounds crazy. That sounds really weird. Yeah, I know. I'm also a little burned out on multiverse stuff, but an excuse to put a bunch of Wolverines together sounds crazy enough that I want to see how they bounce off each other. Yeah. So we shall see. We shall see. I don't know. Just weird enough that I was curious. I also, I don't know who did this cover art. Oh, wait. I just noticed that it said cover by Deke Ruan. So I like this design with the blue and the red, and that like Jane Howlett is in these sort of like, you know, like 3 claws have scratched through the blue to show her underneath. Maybe I like that. I think that's a pretty solid design. There's some good angles here where I still sort of like, you know, I generally like I follow the curve of this head and musculature down through like this claw line, the edge of this character. Again, it's rounded here. I follow the curve of her back and her head. It makes a nice oval that keeps guiding the eye all the way across the page. I think that that's really good composition. That's all. I wanted to call that out. Sometimes you see something where you're like, yeah, it's good. Yeah, apparently no X-23, but that's why maybe they dropped in somebody new instead. Jane Howlett. Look, who knows? I don't know if it's good or bad. It was weird enough that it caught my eye. Weird enough that it caught my eye. So let me, geez, wow, we're already at 6:42, but I want to talk about some of the comics that came out this week because there were a couple that were incredible. And by the way, I'm working very hard at trying to come up with my list of the top 10 comics of 2023, just something I like doing each year. And it is hard this year. Yeah, I'm just having a hard time figuring out like what the absolute best of the year is. But I just came across one that's been coming out this year that I really love. Local Man through Image Comics by Tony Fleeks and oh, forgive me. Who's the writer artist? Tim Seeley and Tony Fleeks. It's really good. It's really good. All right. Do I have this on? Yes. On. So let me add another camera here. That's it. Gonna zoom in a little and add this to the stage. There we go. Let me shift this over a little. Let's just talk. You know what? Because it's so late, I'll try to keep my reviews somewhat focused and small for what came out this week. I guess zoom back out a little. Yeah. But I picked up the Hellboy Winter Special. It's been a little while since I've read Hellboy, but I love Hellboy. This is written and drawn by a guy named Matt Smith. Not the guy that plays the Doctor from Doctor Who, but very much in keeping with the style of Mike Mignola. Not Mike Mignola, like, not a copy, but the same way of, like, rendering a statue with harsh shadows and nice clean lines. A lot to like about this. And it involves with an Icelandic legend, a real Icelandic legend about this, the Yule Cat. It's got a long Icelandic name, but the cat basically punishes children that haven't worked hard enough to earn new clothes for Christmas, which sounds a little messed up, but it's real. All that means is that eventually Hellboy gets to have a fight with a massive cat. And a few other monsters are mixed in. Some stuff with some sort of troll-looking guys. But I just love, like, and let's shout out the colorist as well, because these desolate, icy landscapes of nothingness definitely feel very real, and like these, like, sort of quiet scenes inside where, you know, you can tell that it's like still, like, you've got little bits of snow in all the windows. It really feels authentic in that regard. I want to figure out who the colorist was. Colors by Chris O'Halloran. Chris O'Halloran. Very nicely done. Very nicely done. This was a fun issue, folks. If you want to see Hellboy fight a gigantic cat, this is for you. One and done. One and done. So, haven't read Hellboy before? Give this a shot. You'll honestly know if you like Hellboy or not. This is him investigating something supernatural and getting in a fight. It doesn't have to be much more than that. Here's one that will make my top 10 list. I thought about it very briefly after I finished, and I was like, yeah, this was one of the best comics I read this year. So I won't give away too much, but Brubaker and Phillips tend to make crime comics. Could be criminal, could be pulp, could be, I don't know, what was the one that came out at the beginning of this year? Night Mask or Nightshade, something like that. Look, whatever. This is called Where the Body Was. And it's about a person that gets killed summer of 1984 in this rural neighborhood. And you meet a lot of characters. But here's the thing. Even though this is like a bit of a murder mystery, that's not what this one's really about. Which is what makes it impressive to me, because they've done Night Fever. Thank you. Night Fever was fantastic. Night Fever was good. This uses the framework of a murder mystery to instead tell interconnecting stories of first romances, and especially with troubled, realistic people. You know, we've got the juvenile delinquent. We've got a teenage runaway. We've got a guy that's got a badge, a police badge. We've got a psychiatrist, his neglected wife. Sorry, I just dropped my mic. A neglected wife, a private eye, a young teenage girl that wants to be a superhero, a local vagrant, homeless man, an older lady that's retired on the neighborhood watch. I'm trying to, you know, like there's nudity and sex and violence in this, but it is an incredibly captivating story of all sorts of people with very different personalities, occasionally breaking the fourth wall and talking directly to us, the audience, about their past So like in the modern day, they're talking to us about what happened back during this summer. And all it is ultimately is about people being in their first serious relationship. And to be honest, it's mainly two different love, two different like couples that fall in love, but both of them are not healthy relationships necessarily. It's interesting. Um, and who killed this guy? Lots of people have motive. Lots of people have motive for who killed this guy. It's not what you think. There is a twist to it. So that's great. Let's see. Quick question. Nice to see you, Tari. Are you going to do any pros and cons episode next week? Just asking since Monday is Christmas. Great question. I think what I will do is, first of all, even if I was free, I wouldn't expect most of my audience to be free on Christmas Day. So I think I'll push that to Tuesday night for the next 2 weeks. Because, yeah, like, let me double check the calendar in front of me. Hold on. Yeah, I think I'll do it on December 26th. I'll do this show, and I'll do it on January 2nd. Well, then again, like January 1st might be okay because it's really the 31st that's New Year's Eve. That's the holiday. People will just be recovering on the 1st. Yeah, so I think what I'll do is I'll do it on the 26th, Tuesday next week, and then I'll go back to the Monday night. I think that's what I'll do. Good question. Reminds me a bit of that segment in Contract with God. You're not wrong. Dealing with one neighborhood and the different people that all live there. Just want to say that, like, look, Brubaker and Phillips are my personal favorite team in comics. Very consistent. I've never been disappointed by one of their books. Some of them are incredible. Some of them are just great. But they always do a good thing. And I love that they're in a position now where instead of putting things out as floppies, they just wait, and like every 6 or 7 months, they put out a full book. They put out a full story, and it just takes whatever it takes. I love the Reckless series. They just wanted to take a small break from that and do some different stuff. Where the Body Was is interesting because it's got a little bit of more humor than some of them, and not exactly a femme fatale, although like definitely still women that guys fall for that they shouldn't. So anyway, that'll be this is probably going to make my top 10 list. I don't know where, but this is probably going to make my top 10 list. Brian Michael Bendis has reteamed with Alex Maleev. They've worked on both Scarlet and, of course, Daredevil. Right? Didn't Maleev work on Daredevil with Bendis? Jesus, that's going back like almost 20 years. I'm trying to remember. I think that they did. This is a new crime comic, though, and Bendis is good at crime comics. Very different from Brubaker and Phillips in some regards. A little bit more emphasis on the dialogue, yes, but a similar way of building a bunch of diverse and interesting characters. And in this super rich billionaire from Hollywood, he had been robbed back in the day by the world's greatest like cat burglars, right? But he finds out that they had a daughter that they left. And he kidnaps the daughter and is like, "You're going to make things right." He's like, I've been following you. I tracked you down. You're really, really smart. And you're going to make me right. You're going to rob somebody that I hate. So he's forcing her to be a criminal, and her name was Masterpiece. Her parents named her Masterpiece. She's a webcomics creator, by the way. So yeah, we're dealing with Hollywood billionaires and teenage webcomics creators, and a forced heist with a secret backstory about her missing thief parents. Just strange enough that it all makes me curious to see more. I read through this very fast. I do recommend it. What a week for crime comics, folks. A third crime comic? Yeah. A third crime comic. Again, by a master. I mean, if you were going to talk about who makes the best crime comics today, you'd say Brubaker Phillips. You'd probably think of Brian Michael Bendis. And I think you'd have to put the Laphams in there, David and Maria Lapham, for their work on Stray Bullets. I don't know how you couldn't. Well, Underheist is about a random group of people that hear about a heist that's going on, and they make plans to steal from those people that are doing the heist. It comes through a work site that they're working on. So that's how they found out about it. And they know the work site. Not all of them trust each other. Some of them aren't career criminals. One or two of them have done a job before. It's a really motley group of individuals. And those personalities butting at heads makes you think, yeah, things are going to go wrong. And how's the main character going to get out of it once things do go wrong? But then there's like a bit of a twist to the heist. It implies that they're stealing from possibly hell itself. There might be down in the tunnels below the city. It may literally go all the way to hell. We'll see. Not for sure in this first issue, but it's implied that there's something darker than you'd expect going on. So just want to say, if you like crime works very well in comics because you can have chase scenes, you can have confrontations with people. It doesn't have to be like horror is trickier, but crime works really well. So 3 fantastic crime books that came out this week that I really do recommend. This one maybe more than the others for its overall presentation and how and it's complete, but yeah. Lapham, Bendis, Brubaker, pretty much masters of crime comics in my opinion. Raphael Grandpa is doing a 3-issue Batman book called Gargoyle of Gotham. It covers a little bit of the same ground that the most recent Batman movie does, where this is a version of Bruce Wayne, who is literally like in his like maybe 2 years into being Batman, and he's thinking he wants to kill off Bruce Wayne so that he can commit to being Batman full time. Alfred does not agree, but it's got a couple interesting new villains. Like this guy is inspired by violent cartoons, like the early Tom and Jerry cartoons. He wants to recreate that violence in person. There's also where there's another like sort of new villain that I have no idea what's up with them. Yeah, this person that like is covered in moths, but like spends his days as a priest. I don't think it's Killer Moth. I think that these are new characters. Jim Gordon is not the commissioner yet, so he can sort of help, but he's not really authorized to help. And the artwork is really, really cool. Raphael Grandpa has a bit of a cartoony style that might remind you a little of something maybe more like Paul Pope, maybe a little. But it works. It's very expressive. It's very clear and easy to read. It's good. It's pretty darn. It's interesting. I don't find Batman to be 100% likable in this, and that might be a knock, or it might just be that I'm getting a character arc here where he's going to discover that he can do good as Bruce Wayne billionaire. I'm not sure yet. Yeah, Batman Year 2.5. Mother Teresa. Yes. It's interesting. It seemed kind of like Batman versus Itchy the Killer with the crying guy. That's a really interesting observation, Kale. The guy that's all in black here, like Batman has arrested him. He's the threat in the first issue. This is issue 2. Very violent killer, but also like cries at what he's done. So it's an interesting character. Raphael is a cool grandpa. Exactly. Immortal Thor is good. This issue features Thor assembling a Thor Corps, people that he can trust with his hammer. Storm, Beta Ray Bill, Jane Foster, his brother Loki, going up against the Utgard Thor, Toranos. Just want to say, I think it's Martin Coccolo. I don't know how to pronounce this artist's name. Let me see. Maybe it's on the back page. I hate when you can't figure out where the credits are. It's frustrating. Yeah, Martin Coccolo. Okay. Also, good composition. Telling a story where we've got a fight on the moon. We've got the god Toranos. He carries this gigantic wheel. And the threat to the earth. Just really nice bringing that all together in one scene. Good art. Yeah, really good art. Expressive characters. Good scale. Look at the size of this giant. Like, this is Thor and his allies down here looking up. The Utgard Thor Tornos is massive. Good personalities. Thor has a clever way to potentially beat the enemy. And we see some villains from Thor's past making some plans. Of course, we know Enchantress. Maybe you know the Minotaur. He runs Roxxon, so he works as a businessman a lot. He was a villain in Ewing's Immortal Thor, wasn't he? No. He was a villain in the run with Jane Foster as Thor. He had most of his face blasted off, but he's recovering. It looks like he's bought the rights to Thor from Marvel Comics. In Marvel Comics exists to document the stories of the superheroes. It looks like Minotaur has bought those rights to control some of the public's worship of Thor. Not sure where that's going. Totally wild idea. Ewing is thinking of all sorts of different ways to do the Thor story and mess around. So as far as a superhero comic goes, this is taking it in some interesting new directions. Yes, very meta. Oh, did he just buy all of Marvel Comics? He may have. It's pretty weird. That's right. Yeah, the Minotaur was like attacked by Zemnu. It looks like he survived, but he does not look good. He's scary. This came out a while ago, but Giant Robot Hellboy is kind of fun. I finally found the variant cover. This is Jeff Darrow, Master Jeff Darrow, a variant cover here with Giant Robot Hellboy fighting some gigantic monsters and all the people on the street reacting. And some attention to detail from somebody like Jeff Darrow. First of all, the signs are funny. Medios, I don't know. Everybody's wearing a mask because he made this during the pandemic. Like even all these little people, they've all got like masks. Just an incredible attention to detail. Yeah, Minotaur does look more like Beta Ray Bill now. So much detail. That's awesome. It is weird. Thor should always be weird. Yes. I don't want to take too much more of your time. Damn Them All is absolutely fantastic. This is a supernatural crime comic. I don't feel like recapping it all, but I will say it's some of Charlie Adler's best artwork. Really great panel-to-panel layout, really clear, really just some of his best work, no question. And the writer, Simon Spurrier, boy, does he think of some clever ways for the main character, Ellie, to outthink the rules of magic that exist in this world. Oh my God, the things that she does to upset demons is crazy. Very satisfying. Danger Street wrapped up, folks. Book 12. It's I'm not going to try to summarize 12 books, but I did really like this. I don't think that as far as Tom King stuff goes, that Danger Street is going to make my top 10 list for the year, but it is very good. And I only say that because some of the other stuff he wrote, like Human Target and Wonder Woman, is absolutely a contender for top 10 of the year, maybe both. It would be pretty nuts to have him have 3 books in there. Daniel Warren Johnson has a chance at getting into, because I'm pretty sure Do a Powerbomb came out the beginning of this year and Transformers here at the end. If you're not reading Radiant Black, it's really entertaining superhero stuff. And what it's doing right now, these are not variant covers for just the fun of it, but instead, the timeline has split, and best friends Nathan and Marshall, in each of these timelines, they have taken on the Radiant Black power and are being challenged by alien invaders. And the story is completely different in both. And at first, I thought that Marshall was doing better when this started. He was saving more lives and everything with his decisions. So that was kind of cool. But by the end of this, Marshall loses someone very, very close to him, whereas Nathan, with his decisions, while he hasn't saved everybody, he definitely saves a few more lives here. It's just interesting seeing them go up against the same threat, but the timeline continues to spread further apart the more this goes on. It's really an interesting idea. And that's going to go through issue like 30. This is issue 27. So each one says something like 27, 27.5, part 4, part 5. So you can there is an order to read it in, but really interesting. Really interesting. So I think that's where I'll leave it for comics this week, just because we're already a little over 2 hours. But if you want my recommendations, obviously I'm picking up a lot of the stuff that I like. As far as superhero stuff goes, I think Immortal Thor and Radiant Black are some of the ones I'm having the most fun with. But it was definitely a week for crime comics that were really solid. Again, Under Heist #1 by Lapham. That's coming out through Boom. Boom's putting out a lot of good stuff these days. Dark Horse is putting out Masterpiece. I believe this is just supposed to be 4 issues, something like that. Brian Michael Bendis, Alex Maleev. But if you can only afford one book right now, Where the Body Was by Brubaker and Phillips. They never let you down. They never let you down. So good. So good. Let's see. I'll take some questions before we wrap everything up. Is there a top 10 video that gets made? Yeah, the last several years I have made a top 10 comics of the year. Now, keep in mind, it's of the stuff that I've read. I haven't read everything. I'm only one person, and it's influenced by my opinions, right? So not everybody is going to agree. I understand that. But yes, I typically make a top 10 list of the year. It's a good challenge, to be honest. It's a fun challenge. What comic of Rick Remender should I read first? Well, my question would sincerely be, what kind of comics do you like? And then I'd go from there. Because if you like superhero comics, then the first thing I'd recommend would be his Uncanny X-Force run. Fantastic book. If you're more into sci-fi, I'd say start with Fear Agent. And he's done some other stuff too, fantasy and sci-fi. So it's really hard. I'd need to know what you like most to make a solid recommendation. Let's see. Thanks for there's streams this year, man. Appreciate your work. It's always fun to learn about comics. That's so nice to hear. Appreciate that. Appreciate that a lot. Thank you for the super chat. That's really, really nice. No, not going to do a stream next Monday. I was just saying, I'm going to do it on Tuesday. I'll do it on Tuesday. Uncanny X-Force is so good. It doesn't get interrupted with events, and it's got a beginning, a middle, and an end. So look for the one that was written by Rick Remender. Start with issue 1 by Rick Remender. Follow it all the way through to the end. Couple different artists. Most of them are incredible. Yeah, just really, really good. There's early on, like the first arc is interesting. There's a brief second arc with Deathlock that I didn't find as interesting. But then after that, you get the Dark Angel saga. Just incredible. Just incredible. Why don't more comics get printed on newsprint? Because newsprint is actually more expensive to produce now. You can do it. It's just that there's no real cost savings. Newsprint used to be the cheapest way to make paper. Now it is not the cheapest way anymore, so it doesn't get produced in the same quantities. So yeah, that's why it's not done that way anymore. There's no actual cost savings. It can still look good. Every once in a while comics do print things on newsprint. It's a cool way of doing it, but there really isn't a savings there anymore. Yeah. Was hoping Santa would make an appearance. I didn't think I had. You guys do deserve a Santa appearance. I might have to do a little episode in the middle of the week or something. We'll see. Maybe I'll draw something, and maybe we'll get a visit from Santa. I should do a comic with Rick. Rick does not need to carry me. He's doing great stuff. I've got some ideas. Maybe, who knows? Maybe if I can get a comic out in 2024, maybe Rick would consider putting it through Giant Generator, because he's a smart guy. That's true. Deadly Class is a really good book. It's a really good book. Thank you, John. Wow. Merry Christmas to Chris and family and all troopers. Thank you. It's going to be a good holiday, I think. I'm looking forward to it. House is clean. Chrissy just got some good food for us to cook. Her parents are going to come over. I took care of mailing out all my presents. Oh, wait. Actually, there's 2 more that I need to mail out. But still, I'm really close. Yeah, Walking Dead was reprinted in newsprint, and it's a cool look. I like it. It's just that there's no longer really any cost savings associated with it, because it just isn't produced in the same quantities or anything as it used to be. So, yeah. You should draw Megatron as Santa Claus. Well, I probably should. Santa won't show up until Christmas Eve. That's why we leave cookies out for him. It's his appearance fee. Is Hip Hop Family Tree printed on newsprint, the omnibus? I don't think it's newsprint. No, it wouldn't be newsprint, but it is something that I think has some tooth to it. I'd have to have it in front of me to identify exactly what kind of paper they used. That's probably the one I should pursue first. I've talked about that once. I should do that. Thank you. This was fun, man. That was so nice of Rick to join us at the beginning. In my opinion, he's a really interesting guy to talk to. And if it was, just on my time and there was no concern on his end, I could talk to him for ages, not just about what's coming up, but really dig into his creative process and then just joke around, because I do like joking around with Rick. It's hard to sort of get all of that and condense it, because and you guys had good questions too, but I also need to be sure that I'm not interrupting him too much. That's the only reason I wasn't just hitting him with hey, here's a good question. So we'll see. Oh, yeah. They had a free sort of sampler issue. Yeah. Right? Let's see. I love the interviews. I wish I was here for it. It's always a good time. Well, you can always rewind or watch it later. Yeah, I'm talking to about 3 or 4 different people that could be potential interviews on the show. Just sort of kick it off with not a hour-long interview, but maybe a 20-minute interview if I can. So that's something I'll do here and there. And I think it's always interesting to hear from a professional, get a little insight into what they're doing and why they're doing it. They're all different. But thanks for the questions, guys. I think that will, I think that'll do it. Let's see. It's brown paper looking. Yeah. I don't know what it's called. I don't think it's newsprint, though. I think that would be too thin to produce a whole trade paperback like that in color. I think it would just be too likely to tear. How long have I been on Instagram? I mean, I've been on it personally since it just about started, but I don't know when I started the Comic Tropes account. I have to admit, I don't use Instagram as much as many other people do. I like it. I just haven't gotten into the habit of using it. Oh, that's a good question. Did I get the yes, just to be clear. I did get the Bill Watterson book. Calvin and Hobbes's Bill Watterson actually made something new, which he hasn't done really in quite a while. It's called The Mysteries. He worked with another cartoonist named John Cashed, so it doesn't look like Calvin and Hobbes, and it's basically a quick little sort of storybook. It's a quick little black and white storybook. It's interesting. It's a very interesting experimental project. I liked it. It's probably tonally maybe a bit darker than like what you might expect if all you know is Calvin and Hobbes and you don't know, but yeah, he was doing something unique with this. So this is, at Amazon and Barnes and Nobles and stuff. I think it's like, $20 unless there's a sale. So yeah, it's an interesting thing if you want to see more by Bill Watterson. It's cool. Will that do it? I'm just double checking. Yep. If I had more time, I'd sketch, but I'm gonna go and I got to check on my family. My side of the family all lives in New England, and they're getting hit by big winds. Not necessarily a hurricane, I don't think, but big winds that have knocked out the power. I believe my mother and my sister have each not had power since 10 a.m. this morning, and they're predicting that it may take up to 3 days to get the power up and running. So I'm definitely a little worried about them getting cold. I'm going to reach out to them and before it gets too late on the East Coast. So bear with me. That's just something I want to get done. Oh, Comic Tropes is coming. I've got an episode, a little shorter than some, but I think it's like focused and to the point. I think it'll be interesting. I will have that up probably somewhere middle end of this week. So there is a Comic Tropes coming before the holiday, okay? Thank you, everybody. I had a great time. Take care. Keep reading comics. Bye.